Thank you for being with us. Let's drill down more into these figures. What are the key takeaways, do we think?
Well, I think what your listeners will hear quite regularly is talk of things like weather impacting sales. And whilst that is absolutely true, and we do shop emotionally, and just if I'm not trying to tempt fate here, but if we got a good result on the football this weekend, that might stimulate some sales. There is more to the change in shopping habits that meets the eye generally. It's more sophisticated than just the weather piece. So if you think about going back a few years, some of your listeners might be too young to remember this, but when I was young, there were two big sales periods. Summer and after Christmas, winter, right?
Yeah.
Now we are pretty much faced with promotional codes every day. We shop through social media, we shop online. Re-commerce, which is the second-hand marketplace, has really taken on a strong resurgence. So there's so many different dynamics to how we're shopping that when we look at a retail offer, it's not as simple as saying that retailer did well, it did badly. We're going through this massive evolution of how we shop, and some retailers are just finding it difficult to keep up with the demands from us.
Yeah, and also, as we said, you can't really rely on these spike events, as we have been doing over the past couple of years, be it at festivals or sporting events, to try and maintain a retail sector. It doesn't work that way, does it?
No, we do get spikes, and they are nice little wins, but I think that's how the retailer needs to see them now, that they're bonuses rather than the overall. Overall, what do consumers really want? Well, there's four main areas. Service will always be really important. Value for money will definitely be predominant for years to come.
Absolutely.
Something different, something to bring joy, something innovative, something I've not seen before. And a lot of that is stimulated by social media. I've just seen a trend here. I want to be one of the first to have it. And I think overall as well, that reassurance that if we do buy something of a significant price or over, that retailer is going to be there tomorrow. Or, if we buy a gift voucher or if we've got a problem with something, we can trust the brand. So with all of those dynamics, that means that it's quite challenging for organisations to build that rapport with us, particularly when we then as consumers, we don't show loyalty in the same way. We're quite fickle, and we will do things such as, so there's a name, it's called showrooming, as we know it in the trade. And what that means to you and I is you basically go into a store like Wilko's, you're having a look at some of the products, you get your phone straight out, and then you can look at online at the prices. And guess what? That makes it very difficult for them to do all of the other things, the bells and whistles that we want.
You raised a really interesting point there that I hadn't considered, I suppose, when it comes to this, is the secondary market, which is almost taking retailers out of it, isn't it? And then being able to sell your old goods and people getting a decent price that way.
The growth there is phenomenal, and it makes really good sense. There's multiple reasons why it works. The sustainability story. Why would we want more things in the marketplace when there's pretty good stuff that we've just grown tired of ourselves and it's still got a second, third life? The price of it is available. And I think also people are loving this idea of, we heard side hustle used a lot in terminology when it came to the lockdown and beyond. But why are you not going to want to get a supplementary income stream for items that are just sat around in your own house? And if you look at your rent or your mortgage and you divided that per square foot of your house, why would you want something sat there, space-wise, taking up space you're not going to use?
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
It's been huge when it comes to the growth there, and rightly so.
Yeah, makes sense. And lockdowns gave people a perfect opportunity to do both buying and selling, didn't they? Now, the ONS have said it was a particularly bad month for supermarkets as well. Is that something that's happened?
Look, there's a few things going on there. Definitely, we're starting to see a slight, I'm saying slight because, it's not huge amounts, but slight drop in prices. Supermarkets having to work incredibly competitively to make sure they're winners, because supermarkets don't make lots of money on single items. The win for them is our loyalty, so the bigger basket spends, that's what they're after from us. So it's a hugely competitive marketplace. But many of us were on holiday at that time of year. We were eating out. There were a lot of promotions and offers. We were using the takeout services. So there's a lot behind simply switching on or off food. But of course, when we get to budget times, in the fact that most people are starting to think about, okay, the weather's going to drop the temperature, I've started in on the heating, I'm going to have additional costs here, you start to modify the areas you spend in.
It makes perfect sense. And interestingly, given what we're talking about and what we're about to talk about, department stores have seen a decline in household goods. I mean, is there still a place? Will there be a place going forward for the good old department store, do we think?
Let me put something back to you. Is Amazon a department store? Because I think it is. I think it's a shop with multiple different departments of which we buy from. So it's a reconditioning of the department store, isn't it? And I think Primark would be another example of that. Just as we would then perhaps imagine those traditional department stores, M&S would be a department store, mean multiple departments. I think those multi-tiered, big old stores that take up a lot of space probably have some of the same headaches that a brand like Wilko's actually did, which is big stores take a lot of money to run. They're reliant on a lot of footfall, and that footfall just generally as it used to be. So I think you'll still have the flagship stores in the big cities and towns, but I think you'll also see offshoots of them. You know, an interesting example of that is Harrods or Harvey Nichols taking out their beauty department and just having standalone beauty stores in different towns and cities.
Okay.
Obviously, online being part of that as well. So yeah, will the department? All shopping will continue, just in a different way. We're evolving, and it's changing all of the time. And can I just say that can be quite exhausting then for retailers to try and keep up with.
I can believe that. I do find it so interesting, Kate. I've spoken a lot about this, about the idea of footfall. We've talked about that versus online. It doesn't have to be mutually exclusive, but I do still think there's a place, I don't know, maybe this is a utopian view of mine, for people to want to go out to shop, not just to go and shop, but to be able to socialise and not basically be so insular all the time. Is that something that we think might expand, or have we gone down this sort of digital rabbit hole now and we're not going to go any further than that?
Not at all. As soon as stores open back up again, there was a rallying for stores. We will still want to browse. We'll still want to be social. I think our high streets will be human high streets rather than just pure retail play. But that doesn't mean that there isn't purpose. And one of the things I absolutely advocate for is more micro businesses, small businesses, bringing the DNA of your place back to your high street. Who wants those vanilla cookie-cutter high streets where you got off a train or a bus in the UK and was like, well, where am I now? Because it looks exactly the same as the last place. Yeah. We need differentiation, and I really celebrate anyone in your communities that have been those smaller retailers that have done that. And you know what? Support them, because that is not an easy ride. I can assure you there will be some days where they've just got their head in the hands going, how do I keep going with this? And they are doing it to provide a better place for you as well as the services they offer.
Completely agree. I think historically we've always been very much that kind of boutique or individual coffee shop or whatever. So I'd love to see that continue. Obviously, a lot of that is predicated on money. Now, Wilko on the hunt for a buyer after going to administration. What about the situation there? What's going to be next for them, do you think?
Look, it's a dilemma, and you know, I'm very aware that on these interviews that I'm doing, there are people working for that organisation or related to that will hear this, and of course my absolute thoughts are with retail workers. You have to be really multi-skilled to be able to be on a shop floor, and they will have worked their socks off to make sure that they did everything they can so far. So this is much more technical. This is about the strategy of the organisation. Big stores, lots of products, lots of consumers coming wanting the best price, not always buying from there, but maybe browsing there. And I think it's a little bit like Woolworths. That's what we're hearing at the moment. This kind of melancholy going on of, oh my goodness, if they weren't there, I would miss them. But if it was working as a model, we wouldn't be in this predicament right now.